At the time when King Arthur ruled in Britain, there was a fair knight who was much favored at the court of Brittany across the Channel. And he and his lady wife lived in a chateau not far from the royal court. But he had an odd penchant that once a month, he had to travel and leave the chateau and disappear for about a week. And this bothered his wife because he would not tell her where he was going or why. So she kept pestering him. She said, "What if there was an emergency and I needed to tell the king where you were? What if the sheep got out of the fold and I needed to send somebody to find you to bring you back?" So he finally said, "Very well, but it's a deep family secret and you cannot tell anybody." She said, "Very well, I understand." He says, "Once a month, I must go off and be a wolf in the forest." She said, "Oh, right through the forest?" And he said, No. I take my clothes off and I become a wolf for 3 days." And you can only imagine the stunned look on her face that she was married to a wolf, a man, and yet he was also a wolf. She said, "Well, what do you do with your clothes while you're a wolf?" He said, "You know that ruined old chapel off the main road about 10 miles from the chateau?" She said, "I leave them there, and then after 3 days I have to come back and put on exactly that set of clothes so I can turn back into a man." She said, "Very good, thank you." Well, the days went by and it got closer and closer to the time of the month that he usually left the chateau, and she was in a tizzy because she just could not imagine living with him anymore. I mean, can you imagine going to bed with a wolf? Having a wolf as the father of your children, which they didn't yet, but they might. And she tried to riddle how she could solve this problem. Well, there was also a young knight in the area who had made bids to pay attention to her, and she called him to the chateau while her husband, just after her husband left for the monthly sojourn, and she said, "I have a deep, dark secret to tell you, and you must not tell anybody." He said, "Yes, my lady." She said, "If you will go to that old ruined chapel about 10 miles from the chateau, and you will find a pile of my husband's clothes. You will pick them up, and you will take them somewhere and hide them again." And he said, "And if I do this for you, my lady," she said, "given the right amount of time, I will marry you." Well, the young man wasn't quite sure what was going on, but he realized that something was going on and that she had offered to marry him. And the only way to offer to marry him was to have somehow had her current husband not be available anymore. So he went down the road, found the pile of clothes in the ruined old chapel, bundled them up, took them deeper into the woods, and stuck them up into a tree, and then rode back to the chateau and announced what he had done. Well, at the end of the week, the knight did not return, the older knight did not return to his chateau. The king was much horrified to find that one of his favorites was missing, and sent people out into the countryside to look for him, because they knew the horse he usually rode. They found the horse, but they didn't find the knight. The days, the weeks, the months went on, almost a year. Finally, it was decided that whatever had happened to him was fairly permanent, and so they allowed his wife to remarry to the young knight from down the road. And about that time, word reached the king at his court that there was a great wolf in the forest. And he was a wily old wolf, and a dangerous old wolf, and nobody could catch him. So one day the king called forth his huntsmen and said, "We are going wolf hunting." And so they did. They went off into the woods, and soon the hounds caught the scent, and they went baying off into the woods, and soon they could see the wolf in the distance, and they caught up. They rode and rode and rode and finally caught up where he was trapped against the edge of a cliff. And just as the king's huntsmen were going forward with their spears to kill the wolf, the king rode into the clearing, and the wolf stopped fighting and bowed down to the king and lay there. And the king said, "Well, this wolf obviously recognizes that I am the king and important. We should take him with us back to court." And the huntsman went, "Your Majesty, this is not a good idea. It's a wolf." He said, "Put a rope around its neck and have him come with me. I will take him." Sure enough, the wolf trotted along beside the king. They got back to court, and they made a nice, beautiful collar for him, a leather collar with studs and jewels, and he sat beside the king. Calmly, quietly, walked with the king, didn't have to have any kind of tie or anything. And the word went out throughout the kingdom that this magnificent wolf become friends with the king. And one day, the young knight, who had married the widow of the missing knight, came to court and came into the royal presence of the king, and the wolf growled. And the young knight came closer, and the wolf stood up, and the hair on the back of his neck bristled. The king said, "Settle down, settle down, settle down. It's okay. He's friendly. He's a friend." And the wolf just, and he wouldn't. But the king said, maybe you should go away. You're upsetting my wolf." So the young man did. Several days later, the widow of the missing knight had been chosen to be one of the women who brought the breakfast to the king in bed. And as she entered the king's bedroom, the wolf came off his bed, the king's bed, and knocked her to the floor and bit her nose off. And the king was shocked and pulled the wolf off. The wolf was like hair standing up and growling, and this woman was screaming. Finally, so they took her away, and one of the huntsmen said, who happened to be there, "See, we told you, you have to kill him. He's dangerous." And one of the king's advisors said, Your Majesty, something odd's going on here. It's the new husband and the widow that only the wolf is bothered by. Something odd is going on here. I think we should talk to these two people separately. So they were taken down to the bowels of the castle and shown the array of equipment that could be used to find out what the truth was. And ultimately, they both came up with mostly the same story. The young knight didn't have all of it because he didn't know about the wolf part, but the widow admitted what had happened. So the advisors came back and told the king. And the king said, "So if we get these clothes back, we can give them to the wolf and he'll turn back into my favorite, the knight." They said, "Yes." He says, "Well, then let's go get the clothes." So they went out and they found the tree, and they climbed up the tree, they took the clothes down, brought them back to the court, spread them out on the floor in front of the wolf, and stood there and watched. And the wolf just lay there, did nothing. The advisor said, "Your Majesty, maybe if we leave him in private. I mean, you wouldn't want to change in front of all your friends, would you?" So they finally left the room, closed the door, put their ear to the door, and soon they heard a great snoring. Peeked in, and there was the knight, dressed in all of his clothes, asleep on the king's bed. And so ends the story of how the fair knight was returned to his king and his widow, and her new husband were banished from the kingdom, never to be seen again.